Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morgan, Roth Motor City Madmouth. Glad to have Steve Balestrieri on the broadcast. And Steve, ready for another round of Wednesday night football?
Absolutely, man. It never gets old. It just keeps getting better and better, my friend.
You bet, man. I always strive for one thing. Call me the Brett Favre of broadcasting. I like to sling it downfield and see what the living heck happens. So why don't you let the audience know a little bit about what you do, and then we'll elaborate more on that later. So those that are watching and listening for the first time get to know you a little bit more.
Well, I thank you, and thanks for having me. As always, I look forward to these Wednesday night gab fests we have, talking football. You can find me on Twitter, at SteveB7SFG. I write for PatsFans.com. I also do a podcast for them, Patriots 4th and 2. I also write for a military website called SOFREP.com, Special Operations Forces Report. And I cover breaking news and military affairs as well as national security stuff. So that keeps me kind of grounded. But, you know, football is football. So.
No doubt about it, Steve. No doubt about it. So with that said, let's segue over to our first topic of the night. Report that the Seattle Seahawks are among several teams that are interested in Antonio Brown. Is he worth the trouble? I mean, this guy has more lives than Morris, so it appears, Steve.
You know, there's no doubting his talent. I'm a firm believer in that. However, you know, when I look at the whole big picture, I guess you could say, with Antonio Brown,
right?
I don't think he's worth it. I think, you know, he's like the big tease. You know what I mean? And up in New England, we saw that firsthand. I mean, he played one game for the Patriots last year, played very well, scored a touchdown, got everyone all excited, and then, you know, just like he did in Pittsburgh and just like he did with the Raiders, you know, the wheels fell off and they ended up releasing him. And, you know, he hasn't played since then. Can the guy play football? Absolutely. But he's a basket case. I'd steer clear of him. I really would. As good as he is, I'd steer clear of him.
Well, if Seattle goes after him, you know, Pete Carroll probably thinks he can handle him and deal with him. And when you have Russell Wilson, okay, there, then you might think you would have a strong enough locker room / coach that could contain this guy. I love the word big tease because that's exactly what he is. You know, there's a lot of baggage there, but if you can get anything out of baggage, and the NFL is known for having these big teases, like Josh Gordon is another one. Right when you think you gave him another chance, all of a sudden they find a way to blow it. And
Yep.
Antonio Brown, you know, I mean, we talk about, you know, being a volatile individual. He's definitely it. But I think there's only two places that I think could handle Antonio Brown, Steve. I believe you're looking at Seattle, Pete Carroll, and Russell Wilson. The only other one I could imagine would be John Harbaugh and the Baltimore Ravens, along with Lamar Jackson. Other than that, I don't see it, Steve.
No, and you know, the funny thing, everyone thought, well, Belichick can handle him. You know, he'll fall right in line. And it had nothing to do with anything on the field or on the practice field. It had to do with off the field. And, you know, he just, I mean, I think he's a basket case. I mean, he's a very talented basket case, but he's a basket case nonetheless. And, you know, that's just going to be one of those things that, I don't know. I think he's the big tease. I think you bring him in, you know, with the realization that, yeah, you could get some incredible, you know, production out of him. And you can also get, you know, him blowing up your locker room if you're not careful.
Yeah. Call more trouble than he's worth. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yes.
No problem. We'll take that to the bank credit union and cash in on that. What can I tell you, Mr. Balestrieri? All right, well, we'll talk about a guy that has a great education, and that's Ryan Fitzpatrick, who says it's hard broken over the benching. He felt it was his team. He was 3-3, and the Dolphins competed, and he completed 70.1% of his passes, 1,535 yards, 10 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Ryan Fitzpatrick knew this day was coming. I don't think he expected to be a little sooner than 6 games, but when you consider the fact that there's a bye week, what are your thoughts about Ryan Fitzpatrick? I know you're a big fan of the New England type of guy / Harvard.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, I was a huge fan of Tua in college. I really wanted to see him go somewhere and play well. I think he's going to be a really good quarterback. That being said, Fitzpatrick is one of those guys you kind of root for. Everywhere he goes, he's going there with, the idea that you're not going to be the guy. You're just kind of like, the placeholder until we get the guy. But this year he's been playing so well, and everything I've been reading about the Dolphins, the team is all kind of gathered around him. They believe in him. The offensive players all love him. I just thought it was really shocking that they would make a move now where he's playing as well as he is. And I mean, like I said, I'm a big Tua fan. I want to see him do well. I just thought it was kind of weird timing. I know there's a bye, and then when they come off the bye, they're playing the Jets. So that's gonna kind of be a good game for a guy to play his first NFL game by playing against the Jets.
Well, I believe it's the Rams, if I recall correctly. They just beat the Jets, didn't they? Is the LA Rams at home?
I'm sorry, the Rams.
Oh, that's okay, no big deal. But he mopped up against the Jets with 2 minutes.
Yeah, he mopped up against the Jets, and then he's going to play against the Rams. But
it's at home though, Steve, so it's not a big deal. They put him in a spot where the guy is at home against the Rams. So if you're going to set him up for success, at least you do it at home and with a couple of weeks to prepare. So you're really pretty much right there. You are.
Yeah, and like I said, if Fitzpatrick had been playing subpar or just so, I could take that. I just think he's been playing really, really well. Right. And it seems like the team has really gotten behind him. I read something where one of the running backs there was saying that they all rushed to the meeting room so they could sit next to Fitzy in the meetings. And now, he's not going to be the guy anymore. And I saw some of his comments, and I think this for the first time, this really shook him. I'm wondering if we've seen the last of Fitzy now. I wouldn't be surprised if he retires now.
Wow. Okay. Well, you never know. I mean, obviously this one bothered him a lot more than some of the other situations where he, like you say, was a placeholder, but this one here, obviously, you've been in the game. How long can you continue doing it? And especially when you thought you were playing well, and then he had it taken away from you. Well, so we'll talk about the fact that Brian Flores naming Tua's the starting quarterback. He says it's the best thing for the Dolphins, citing accuracy, decision-making, and, of course, having the bye, which we just alluded to, Steve. So it sounds like to me Brian Flores has built up enough respect within the locker room and that this was his plan all along. And I guess he must feel that Tua's healthy enough to be able to go ahead and play, especially with the severe injuries that he's had in the past.
Yeah, and that plus the fact that, he sees him every day in practice, which we don't get to see. So they must feel like he has a grasp now of the offense where he's not going to get lost. And, he's going to be able to go out there and function at a very high level and have them compete. I mean, right now they're a half game out of first place, or 1 game out of first place, I should say. So, hey, the Dolphins are, right in the mix for the division, so obviously Flores thinks that Tua can compete and he's going to play at a very high level because Fitzpatrick has been playing at a high level. I think he's off to the best start of his career.
Well, I mean, Tua does bring a lot more mobility as a great
Oh, yeah.
arm, and he can extend the pocket, so he's more mobile. All you got to do is get him through a season without getting hurt, and that's always been a big question mark in Tua, especially in college and out. He's not playing against kids here; we're playing against men. He's
Mhm.
clock this guy, and then all of a sudden you might see Fitzpatrick in there in the event that they bring him back too premature. And this has premature written all over it. But then again, you don't know whether or not there's a little bit of pressure coming from the owner either, Stephen Ross. And those are things that nobody will let out, and haven't heard. But Stephen Ross is all about being a star type of guy where he likes to see stars out there. And but is this a decision coming from the general manager or the owner? You never know. It's out there for us to speculate, for sure, Steve.
Sure. I mean, that's always a possibility. After a couple of games ago where Fitzpatrick struggled a little bit, there was already some rumbles coming from the fan base, that, it's time, it's Tua time. But then he played so well against the 49ers and won that game. And
Right.
he played very well against the Jets again. And, I thought he kind of quelled those rumors, but who knows? I mean, the one thing is there's not fans in the stands. It's not full yet. So maybe they think this is a good time to ease him in.
Well, he played the last 2 minutes, so if that wasn't the big tip of the cap, then tell me what a tip of the cap is. That now you've seen Tua pop his cherry, get out there for 2 minutes. All of a sudden, we're being set up with as they say in tennis, and I don't play it much, called serve and volley. And this was serve and volley, and all of a sudden, they're serving up Tua against the Rams. So with that said, let's go down to Big D, where Mike McCarthy wants the Cowboys to handle things as men, not complain to the media. Boy, if there's ever a guy who's dead accurate, Mike McCarthy is. I don't get that. Really, these guys, Steve, actually got to go out there and talk to us, the media, and not to the coach. That, to me, is absurd, and McCarthy was dead on.
Yeah, and that shows the spoiled mentality that some of those guys have. Because if you have an issue, you go to the coach. You talk to the coach. You man up, and it's not like running around. If dad says no, you don't run to mom. That's not the way. And running to the media is. I don't know if any coach that'll put up with that. And I thought McCarthy, like you said, was spot on.
Yeah, I mean, come on, really? And you and I are both writers, and you hear an anonymous tip. What is the first thing you hear when you hear an anonymous type of quote or whatever? I mean, really? Give me your interpretation of how you define anonymous and how classless anonymous really is.
Yeah, I don't like anonymous tips because if you're going to say something, put your name to it.
Right.
Now, I understand there are situations where, you might not be able to, but by and large, something like this, if you're going to say a quote like that anonymously, then I'm not printing it unless I can put your name to it.
Exactly. I agree. Totally. All right.
Now, there's a lot of other people, as we know, that will rush to put that in. But that to me, if you're not putting your name on it in a situation like that in the sporting world, then I call it clickbait because that's all it is.
Well, I've never done that before. If you can't go out there and tell me who it is, and to me, it's almost like saying that it's off the record. I will not post it because that thing called integrity, value,
Right.
do come into play, or I'll utilize a better word, Steve, okay, ethics. That's what we were taught to do. You give me your name, I put it. If you don't give me your name, forget it.
Right.
I don't put anonymous names out there. I just don't.
Right. And, myself, I've dealt with a lot of different areas in the journalism field where, you talk to somebody and they were like, okay, this part is off the record. And then you respect that. Okay. But, I'm not going to sit here and say, well, an unnamed source told me this, no.
No, me either. I'm with you. All right, well, let's take this over to Washington. Washington team president Jason Wright said Tuesday that the team rebrand means it will likely unhappen in time for the 2021 season. A brand that truly represents the community is how he prefaced it. And Ron Rivera says 16 to 18 month process, wants the name to stand the test of time for about 100 years. Well, you know what? Daniel Snyder gave up the Redskins, which he thought stood the test of time. But my goodness, do you think it's really going to take that long for our Washington to come up with a new identity? How long are people going to say the Washington football team, even though we could call it the Washington Dysfunctionals? It's exactly how they've been run ever since it was sold from the previous ownership to Daniel Snyder.
Yeah, that was such a proud franchise and such a winning one. And then, I mean, it's just gone steadily downhill with him. And I don't understand why it's going to take. I mean, they actually have a naming website out there where, you know, fans can, you know, put their. I know, like Washington Red Tails earlier this summer was getting a lot of traction in honor of the Tuskegee Airmen from World War II, the first black fighter pilots. They painted the tails of their P-51s red to stand out, and I thought that was a catchy name. It kind of fits in with Redskins, Red Tails.
Right.
You know, it keeps everything, you know, the same color scheme. You know, for the most part. I thought it was neat
too. The logo was pretty good, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it had the airplane logo on there. I thought it was neat.
Yeah.
Somebody else came up with one. I wrote about it last week. They wanted to call it the Washington Seals after like Navy SEALs.
Ooh, okay.
And they took the Navy SEAL logo, like they called the Budweiser badge that the Navy has, and they moved it around a little bit and changed it, and it was really cool looking. And I thought that was neat as well. It might not be as popular, and maybe the Department of the Navy might not want Daniel Snyder using their name, but I thought it was kind of neat.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the Red Tails. Somebody else came up with the Wolves. I thought that was a good name too, Red Wolves. So there's some names out there. I think they just need to make a decision on where they want to go. It shouldn't take 18 months. I mean, come on. You're in a business there. You have to make decisions. Make one.
Yeah, 16, 18 months is a little. I can understand not doing it before 2020, but 2021, really? That's
yeah. Come on. I mean, that's ridiculous. They should have the name before the season's over. It doesn't mean they have to start changing the uniform over. They can stick with the, you know, generic type football uniform for the for the remainder of this year. But I mean, come on, make a decision and stick with it, and then, you know, and do what you. They have a very rabid fan base up there in DC, and they've always supported the team. They'll get behind it if it's a good name, and I think there's a couple of good ones out there.
Yeah, the color scheme is fine. I think their colors are perfectly all right, but I don't think it should take 18 months to come up with a name. So, well, as you well know, I went to Jacksonville over the weekend, saw the Lions and the Jaguars, and the only thing that Matthew Stafford hadn't done was he actually has now thrown a touchdown pass versus all the NFL teams, with one against the Jaguars. So Matthew Stafford checked that box, Steve. And we'll get to the Lions-Jaguars game along with other ones. So what do you think? A quarterback being able to go ahead and throw a touchdown against any NFL team, I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, that's really good. And they played real well. You know, they get off to their early lead like they've been doing, but this time they held on to it. They played solid, and you know, if there's a guy that needed to get a couple of wins in a row, it was Matt Patricia. But getting back to Stafford, I mean, you know, he didn't have the greatest statistical game, but he did what he needed to do, and I thought it was a good team win for them.
I'll give you a reason why he didn't. It was a guy you and I talked about a few weeks ago named DeAndre Swift.
Yes, sir. 116.
116 yards, 54 yards on one shot. In fact, I remember when the Lions took on the Miami Dolphins in 2017, Kerryon Johnson ran for 158 yards, and he was the first Lion, he's a Lion rookie that eclipsed the 100-yard mark. And we all know, and we've talked about this before, Steve, DeAndre Swift is a good young talent. He really is. I don't care about the drop ball that he had in the end zone first game of the year. It doesn't matter. This kid's going to be a stud. And so Matthew Stafford did not need to throw up big numbers against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Mind you, have now lost 5 in a row, have given up 30 points or more in 5 straight losses. And by the way, they've only had 5 kickers in 5 weeks. So talk about the fact that you can't get your kicking situation. By the way, did you ever do that homework I asked you to check out, Gus the Kicking Mule?
No, I didn't. I'm going to write that down right now so I remember.
Gus the Kicking Mule.
Yes.
And if you really want to watch the movie, you'll probably be able to find it during your downtime when you're not out there in your pool or going to Culver's.
I was at Culver's last night.
Oh, I was actually there on Sunday night, actually.
Yeah.
On our way back from Jacksonville. They had great cookie dough.
Oh, but before we get off on the game, though, I wanted to ask you about the protocols of getting into the stadium. We've heard that they've had multiple levels of getting in and protecting the people, especially up there in the press box. And, what was your impression of all that?
They did a good job. They really did. Social distance. There was some space for me, so I had no problem. I actually felt like I was locked in my own little office up there on the second level, or second row in Jacksonville. I was really comfortable, and when I came back home, never felt any. I was a little bit nervous. I didn't know really, Steve, what to expect going into it. It's the first time I'd done it. They did do the pre-screening before on the computer, and they took the temperature check, and they did the things you had to do. But once I got in the press box, I felt like I was doing my own thing. You had to have a mask, of course, and they gave you your food in containers to eat it that way. There was no buffet style. I mean, if I want to get another helping, I could, but it wasn't a big deal. And they didn't have the halftime meal that they usually give you. It was just a matter of snacks, but it didn't really matter. I made up for the Culver's that night. But to answer your question, Steve, they did a really good job. I was really pleased how it turned out.
That was going to be my next question was about the food, because the buffets are always good.
Oh, come on, they're good, man. The NFL and these teams, they feed you really, really good. But,
yes, they do. And
the dessert
so they gave everyone like an individual box lunch type thing?
Pretty much, yeah, Steve, they did. But I was comfortable with the protocols. I felt very safe, had the mask on, had my drinks. I was very comfortable working. And you know what? When we get in the press box, guys like you and I, we're trained, man. You know what? We go in there, we get locked in our own zone, and it doesn't make any difference. Once you're in a press box and you're taking notes, you got your computer up and running. You forget about it. You forget about everything else around it. But to answer your question, Steve, again, good job. I felt comfortable about the whole experience. But yeah, obviously there was a reduced capacity. So for those individuals that have a high demand to get in there, I can't imagine how easy it is going to get a Dolphins pass nowadays with Tua as anointed as a starting quarterback. And I don't care. I'd be happy just to go up to Jacksonville 2 more times this year and concede 2020, get a little bit of NFL and get some work done around the house and do what I got to do. But it was, I had a good time up there. And I think what was more interesting about the whole thing, though, Steve, going into the game, is that the Jacksonville Jaguars had 12 guys on their practice squad. I believe I tested positive, or there was an issue there. I wasn't sure the game was going to be played, but thankfully they did the virtual thing on Saturday. Everybody went to the game on Sunday. The game went off on a schedule. And even though the Jaguars players didn't show up for the game, judging by the score, and that they lost to the Lions, all in all, and the Lions actually won the time of possession battle there as well. So, this had the makings for a Lions win all day long. But no, I felt pretty good, actually. Really felt good. It was good to do it, and hopefully I'll get up there 1 or 2 more times. We'll see how this season plays out. So
I know Kenny Golladay had a big game as well.
Yeah. 4 catches, I think 104, 105 yards, no touchdowns. He's a tall target, but Matthew Stafford's only interception of the game was a cheapie. That was like a tip ball. I don't hold quarterbacks totally responsible for a cheap interception. The ones where they throw it into coverage, I got problems with. That was not one of those situations by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, also know that my man T.J. Hawkinson scored a touchdown too. So.
Well, you know what? I remember watching that touchdown, and Stafford knew in the back of his mind, I need to get a touchdown against Jacksonville, and he took that ball and rifled it right to the numbers of Hawkinson, determined to get that touchdown pass. And yet, your man T.J. Hawkinson was the beneficiary of the only touchdown that Matthew Stafford will probably ever throw against the Jaguars, because who knows if he'll be there 4 years from now when they play him in Detroit anyways, let alone 8 years when they return to Jacksonville. And I'll be collecting Medicare at that time, so it don't make any difference anyways. So
you and I both.
Yeah, so I don't know. I wonder how many years I got left doing this stuff anyways. I'm just enjoying every game I get there and let God and the man upstairs determine what's going to happen. And I'm thankful for the run I've had and hope to continue it for as long as the man upstairs allows me and my body can physically handle it. So we'll see what happens. Call it TBD as we know it. So let's stay with the team you're all too familiar with. The Patriots are below 500 for the first time through 5 games since 2001. Are you shocked about that? And we're going to get into the game in a moment, that the Patriots at this point are 2-3.
I'm not shocked, but I was shocked at the way they played on Sunday. That was pretty awful. It was one of the worst games I think I've seen since Belichick's first season in 2000.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. We'll leave it at that, because now we're going to the games here. And we'll break them down with the ones I have. We're going to talk about this week's action as well. We'll lead off with the Detroit Lions and Jacksonville Jaguars, 34-16. The Lions do win this contest. They're 2-3. Jacksonville, well, they got some problems. They're 1-5.
Yeah, and I don't think they're going to improve very much on that as we go along.
No. Well, they take on the Chargers in Southern California. I think Justin Herbert is poised to have a big game there. But the Lions, to their credit, you know, they played pretty good football game. I don't think the score was even closer than the 34-16. Jacksonville got a touchdown late, but the Lions were never going to relinquish this league. DeAndre Swift obviously did a fine job. Adrian Peterson got a touchdown, and Matthew Stafford got a touchdown pass, and the Lions looked pretty good all the way around. And Matt Patricia got a week off from getting hammered by the media. It's a team he was expected to beat anyway. So
yeah, well, I think his seat is still pretty warm there, but you know, the crescendo has died down just a little bit. You know?
Yeah, we'll see what happens a week from now when we bring him up on the big show for sure.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, I think one that really threw us all off here, Steve, was Tampa Bay 38, Green Bay 10. I don't think any of us saw this one coming.
No, I thought it was going to be a high-scoring game on both sides, not a one-way high-scoring game. You know, and it started off, it looked like the Packers were going to roll early. I think they were up 10-0, if I'm not mistaken, early in the game. And their offense seemed to be clicking, and that was it. Tampa made some adjustments. I thought that their defense really stepped up. And then the running game for Tampa really kicked it in. Again, you know, just like you were saying with Matthew Stafford, Tom Brady didn't have to do a whole heck of a lot. You know, with Ronald Jones running the football, the way their defense was playing was just lights out. And, you know, Rodgers is one of those rare times where he couldn't do anything.
Well, let me tell you this. I know that part of the protocols in Jacksonville was we had to be out of the press box by 8. I was done by 5:30. So my wife, you know, was hoping to see that game, but she picked me up at 5:30. And by that time, the Packers were being manhandled. So I think I saved her a lot of frustration by picking me up over at the game so we can get the track back to South Florida. So of all games for her to worry about not sweating over and missing, Steve,
Yeah,
she's glad to pick me up. Little did she know that we would be going to
exactly. Well, that's what
4 hours
I
later.
told some Patriots fans who missed the game and called me, and they were like, "What happened?" Because if you watch the highlights, it went right down to the last play.
Right.
But Denver absolutely dominated that game for 55 minutes, and then they made a couple of really dumb mistakes and let the Patriots in. And if you're going to miss a game for the Packers, I think that was one to miss.
Oh yeah. Well, with all due respect, Tom Brady was mad after losing in Chicago, and you know what? You know it better than anybody. He doesn't lose two in a row, and I'll tell you what, he didn't this time. Whatever bad will he had in Soldier Field, he more than made up for it over at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa.
Yeah, and Rob Gronkowski uh, had a really nice game, 78 yards, 5 catches, a nice touchdown catch. It was nice to see the big dude get back in the end zone after a long time.
Yeah, but you got to remember he took a year off too. So
Yeah.
Rob Gronkowski probably could have benefited by having a preseason. He really could have. In fact, Brady probably could have, but more so Gronkowski. So let's talk about a guy that we were a little bit critical of before, but boy, he made us look stupid. Nick Foles, 23, with the Bears, 23-16 over Carolina. Nick Foles apparently is asserting himself as the number one guy in Chicago, and the familiarity factor with Matt Nagy is the reason why the Bears are looking awfully good right now.
Yeah, and not only Foles, but that defense of the Bears is really good.
Right.
I like that defense of theirs, but I thought Foles played well. Um, he did throw a pick, but he also had I think it was like 200 yards and a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
He just seems to have, again, like we were talking about with Fitzpatrick. I think the guys on the offense just seem to have that comfort level with him and that confidence that they're going to win the football game.
But yet the irony is they decided to bench the younger guy in favor of the veteran, where the Vulcans did it vice versa. But
Yeah.
Nick Foles, forget about the year he had in Jacksonville last year. It was a tough year. He got hurt. They brought in Gardner Minshew. That experiment didn't work out. And that Jacksonville was looking to unload salary. They found a taker with the Bears. And of course, you couldn't, when you have a quarterback familiar with the coach, as we've seen so many times, whether it would have been Reich with Frank Reich referring to Philip Rivers, familiarity obviously factor does weigh in, and it's benefited the Bears right now, who beat the Carolina Panthers in their own building, 23-16. So they look good. All right, well, I'll tell you what, I never called this a rivalry before, and I never will again. But Pittsburgh 38, Cleveland 7, Baker Mayfield, to me, are we being teased by Baker Mayfield, or did Pittsburgh, to me, just simply have it over Cleveland, and Cleveland's not ready because they definitely got humbled. We all thought this would be a great game, but shame on all of us.
Yeah, that game there was, I guess you could use that word, the tease again, because Cleveland does this. They have a couple of good games, and we all start to, drink the Kool-Aid, and
Right.
Hey, they've turned a corner. They're gonna, be one of those teams now that you have to stand up and recognize. And then they just went out there and got absolutely spanked by the Steelers. And the Steelers defense looks really strong as well. James Conner had a nice day running the football. I think he had about 101, 102 yards. Ben Roethlisberger, again, didn't have to do a whole heck of a lot, but he had a nice touchdown pass. And they just dominated that football game. I don't think it was ever in doubt. I think it was 24-0 at the half. So,
Well, the last Cleveland quarterback, that, as I understand, to win in Pittsburgh was Tim Couch.
Wow.
Yeah. Talk about a house of horrors, Steve.
I didn't realize that. That's going way back, huh?
Come on, Steve. If I didn't give you a little education on the program, I wouldn't be doing my job, right? Gus the kicking mule, which he'll conquer one of these days. Okay.
That's it. Gus the kicking mule. I have to look that up tomorrow. That's on. I already wrote it down. It's on my agenda for tomorrow.
Oh, it's okay. I did the Tim Couch research before. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Why do you think I always call you at 4:30 or 5? Well, the fact I hear about all this stuff anyways and pay close attention. Then again, that's what we have to do anyways, right? As professional journalists, you have to make sure we know what we're talking about, right? We do it. But,
Absolutely.
but nevertheless, Tim Couch was the last quarterback that was able to go to Steel City and beat him. So it's been a while. So, all right. Well, you alluded to this game. Now we're going to go ahead to it. Denver 18, New England 12. Cam Newton's return from COVID was not quite what many had hoped it would be, and as a result, the Patriots are under 500 after 5 games since 2001. So, what's your overall impressions? I know that Denver was trying to give it away, but they didn't, and they came away with a win in Foxborough.
Yeah, Denver dominated up front, both offensive and defensive lines. Um, the Patriots, their offensive line has been hit hard with injury, and now they've been hit hard with COVID. So 4 out of the 5 guys were playing in different positions.
Mm-hmm.
And their right tackle, Jermaine Illumino, was the only one starting in the correct position that he normally plays in. And then he was hurt early in the first quarter and then left the game. So then they had to reshuffle it again. I mean, when you start moving guys around, plus they only had 1 practice in the last 2 weeks.
Right.
I didn't expect they were going to be super sharp, but I thought they were going to play better than they did. I thought they actually were going to win the football game. But Denver dominated up front. Bradley Chubb had a great game. He was in Newton's face all day long. Philip Lindsay had a nice day running the football. And Drew Lock threw some really nice passes, but he made a couple of really poor decisions. Late in the game, they were up handily. All they had to do was run the football, which they had been doing, well, until the second half. They were running the ball really effectively. But they could have just killed the clock, and he threw the ball deep twice into double coverage. Both of them were picked off.
Mm-hmm.
And next thing you know, after they were totally dominated for like 55 minutes, the Patriots have a chance there, they have a 4th down, but they're inside the red zone. They pick up the 1st down, they can win the football game. It was completely, if you look at the box score, you think, oh, it was a really tight game. It
Right.
really wasn't. Denver dominated that football game. And, they almost gave it away, but Cam Newton did not have a good game. He was missing.
Right.
There was guys that were open. He did not throw to them. And then he was very inaccurate. He was holding the ball too long. But I give Denver a lot of credit. I thought they had a great game plan. Their game plan was to, crowd the box,
Mm-hmm.
take away the Patriots' running game, and basically force them to beat them through the air, which they showed they couldn't do.
Well, Bill Belichick admitted that the team needed a lot of work, and the inactivity certainly didn't help him at all. So, Bill Belichick is a man who minces few words, and he's not one to make excuses. He knows that his team didn't play much, and obviously the score indicated as such. So, I'm sure he'll be working them extremely hard to make sure that they don't. Margin of error is very small for the Patriots after 5 games if they're looking to compete. And with the Miami Dolphins breathing down their throat with Tua waiting in the wings and Buffalo looking awfully good, it's another story. And as we segue into that, the Miami Dolphins 24, the New York Jets nothing, a shutout, whitewash, call it what you want. Tua at the end, Ryan Fitzpatrick in the middle, but nevertheless, the Jets are on a collision course to go 0-16 if they keep playing this badly. We know that A&M Gates will be the next one out the door. But why don't we talk about the football game itself and not worry about the Jets drama, which is if it's a matter of when.
Yeah, we could do a whole show on the Jets drama.
Yeah, good.
That's a very dysfunctional lot right there. But again, I thought Miami dominated the game. I thought Fitzpatrick played really well. He threw 3 touchdowns. He completed, I think, like 67% of his passes. And,
right.
I just thought Miami, they were in control of this one from start to finish. Miles Gaskin had just under a 100-yard game. Um, and then their second or third tight end, Adam Shaheen, had a really nice game. He had a couple of catches, a touchdown pass. I thought it was a really good win for Miami across the board. And again, until today, I was like, and they even got Tua involved. But now that we realize they got him involved because he was going to be the guy. So.
Well, I think anytime the Dolphins can beat Adam Gase, they love it anyways because he didn't do their franchise any wonders. I think a lot of people figure that Gase can develop a quarterback, and Ryan Tannehill was better off without him, as evidenced by what's happening out in Tennessee. So anytime you get a win against a coach that you were glad to get rid of, I'm sure that probably even it's called adding sweetener to the situation. So
yeah, and Joe Flacco did not have a great game, and I mean, of course, he's not dealing with a ton of weapons. He doesn't look like the Joe Flacco that we were used to seeing in Baltimore.
Joe Flacco's looking to be employed. That's all I can tell you. Just like Adam Gase. All right. So let's go ahead and the Kansas City Chiefs 26, Buffalo 17. One of the better games of the week, but Buffalo has now lost a couple in a row. Then again, no crime in losing to the Kansas City Chiefs by any means. Kansas City Chiefs did not have Le'Veon Bell. They will this week. We'll get to that shortly. But let's face it, the Chiefs, they were humbled after their loss to the Raiders, and they bounced back.
They did, and this was a really good football game. I thought Buffalo had a good game plan. They were keeping both of their safeties deep. And then, they were basically daring the Chiefs to try to run the ball because they were going to take away those big plays, and they were trying to keep it close, and they did. I mean, this was a close game. It ended up being a 9-point win, but this was a close game for probably, 56 minutes. I thought it was a really good football game. I thought that in the beginning, it looked like the big matchup was a little over the head of Josh Allen, but then he settled down, and I thought he played well after a really slow start. I think he started off like 2 of 9, and then he ended up 14 of 27. And I thought the best pass of the game was the one, it was incomplete. He threw it from like the 50-yard line into the end zone, but it went right through his receiver's hands. And I thought that was the best throw of the game, even, considering who he was playing against was Patrick Mahomes. And, they connect on that one play where it goes right through his receiver's hands. You might be looking at a different, ending for that game. That was, like you said, one of the better games this week.
As much as I hate to utilize the words moral victories, I really don't. But do you think, in a sense, Steve, that this was a moral victory for the Buffalo Bills that they competed against the Kansas City Chiefs?
I think if you asked me that a year or two ago, I would have said yes.
Okay.
But I think the expectations with their coach now is a lot higher.
Okay.
And I think that I don't think they're taking it as such. I think that they're looking at it as an opportunity missed.
Meanwhile, these two teams could see each other later on in the year anyways in the playoffs. So they'll have, as we all know, that you face a team twice, the outcome could be different the second time around. So stay tuned. This could be playing. I didn't see the game because this. So, microphone. All right.
It was a great game. Like I said, it was very entertaining. And, Buffalo slowed the game down. They were keeping Mahomes on the sideline. And even though, they were inviting the Chiefs to run the ball, Chiefs ran the ball a lot better than Buffalo was expecting them to. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had a tremendous game, 161 yards,
Okay. Well,
that was the difference.
Let's talk about the Arizona Cardinals, Dallas Cowboys. I thought Andy Dalton would fare far better than he did, But
So,
with all due respect, let's talk about the performance of the Arizona Cardinals, 38-10, dominating at Jerry's Place, AT&T Stadium. Sometimes I don't know exactly what to take of the Cardinals, but you know that they can be explosive for sure. So, give me your take on this one.
yeah, it was funny because after, what happened with Dak, and then the fact that they had Andy Dalton in the wings, I thought the Cowboys were going to rally around Andy his first game. I thought they would come out and play really well. I picked him to win the game. And
Makes both of us, so we both look like
yeah,
idiots.
I was really wrong on that one. They turned the ball over. I think it was 4 times. It was just, I thought the Cardinals, again, the first quarter started off slow. There was no scoring, but then they kicked it into gear, and I thought they dominated. After that, the Cowboys they couldn't seem to do anything right. Dalton had a rough game.
Well, I was wrong on a lot of football games last week, so I'm not going to advertise my inability to get them right last week. We'll see how I do in a moment on the other ones. But yeah, got to hand it to Arizona. They walked in there in Dallas' place and they took it to them, and they made the Cowboys look bad, as we alluded to with the Mike McCarthy situation. That Dallas looked like they were had their heads between their legs. Meanwhile, the Cardinals, they look like they're going to compete, and they walked in there. It was a pretty impressive outing against a team that certainly has a lot of
And
problems.
Kenyon Drake, former Miami Dolphin, had a tremendous game. 165, 164 yards, 2 touchdowns. I thought he had a tremendous football game. And Dallas's defense has got some issues.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, we've documented in past broadcasts that they give up a lot of points.
Yeah.
And it doesn't hurt that you have DeAndre Hopkins and Larry Fitzgerald, Kenyon Drake, and Kyler Murray barking down and biting you all every which way but loose. So, all right. Well, let's talk about this week. Thursday night game is the New York Giants 1-5 against the Philadelphia Eagles 1-4-1. And believe it or not, the Philadelphia Eagles are in second place. Oh, goodness. This is a nationally televised game. What are we getting out of this thing except it's a nationally televised game with 2 of the larger media markets in the country and an awful lot of not intrigue. I don't know. I'm at a loss for words on this, Steve. And you know what? It takes a lot for me to be at a loss of words, but I am this time.
Yeah. I mean, you're 1-4-1, but with a win, you go into first place. So, and the NFC East is really hurting this year, isn't it?
Yeah.
As bad as these 2 teams are right now, this might end up being a very entertaining football game.
Well, you kind of wonder a little bit, does the tie work to your advantage in some cases or not? And I think it could really work in their advantage because it's not a win, it's not a loss, especially down the stretch when you have to decide. You don't have to worry about 2 500 teams, and that's how the tie could work to your advantage.
Absolutely. And I like the Eagles in this one. I think the Giants are still struggling. And, the Eagles kind of got their game together, even though they lost against Baltimore last week. I thought they showed a lot of spunk in the fourth quarter and trying to come back. It was a close game, and maybe that will spur them on to playing better football than they have been, because they haven't been good.
Well, you never know. The way quarterbacks are moving in and out of lineups, who's to say there won't be a Jalen Hurts sighting at some point down the road if the Eagles continue to struggle? I mean, teams are not afraid to put quarterbacks in. I'm not going to blame the Eagles' problems on Carson Wentz, but I'll tell you, it has not been the same quarterback since Frank Reich left, that's for sure. So,
no.
And of course, it didn't hurt that Nick Foles bolted either. So, yeah, but I'm with you, Steve. I'll give the Eagles the win, a close game, 3 points or so, like maybe 20-17, something like that.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little higher. I think it is going to be like 28-13.
Okay, 28-13. and I'll say 20-17. And folks, believe Steve, don't believe me after the week I had last week. So. But we'll be on record saying what we do, and we'll see. And sometimes I like to forget half of what I say, anyways. Except some of it is information, so it's hard to do anyhow. All right. Well, the Detroit Lions go take on the Atlanta Falcons, 2-3. Lions against the Atlanta Falcons, who came away with a win in Minnesota. Raheem Moore.
Impressive win, too.
Yeah, I mean, took the Romeo Crennel Kool-Aid and won his interim debut. So the Lions 2-3 against Atlanta. You know what? I'm going to give the Lions the benefit of the doubt on this one. I really am. They've won. Their 2 wins have actually occurred on the road, Arizona and Jacksonville. I think they can do it again in Atlanta. I'm looking at Detroit winning maybe 26-20.
Yeah, I'm still not a believer in that Atlanta defense. I know they have some good weapons on offense. I like that score. I was thinking like 27-23. So I think we're pretty close right there.
Yeah, scariest thought is if Matt Patricia wins another game, he's 3-3, and then the Detroit media has to leave him alone. If you're reading those transcripts that I'm sending in, I know you are. He's been able to enjoy his first couple of Zoom meetings. Let me tell you, he really has. So we'll see whether.
Yeah, well, they needed to enjoy a couple because it hasn't been pretty there, but. Hey, they played some good ball the last couple of weeks, so
yeah.
Who knows? If they win this one, then maybe they'll get on a little bit of a roll.
Yeah, and maybe the media will get off of Matt Patricia's back, and for that matter, Bob Quinn. But Matt Patricia's the guy at the forefront of all the questions. Bob Quinn gets to stand in the background. But I'm giving the Lions the benefit of the doubt. They seem, for a team that can't win on the road in the past, where they've set road losing streak records like 24, 25 in a row a couple of times. Their only wins this year have occurred on the road. And guess what? They're playing indoors, okay, at the Mercedes-Benz Zone. I was actually there last year in December. That's a beautiful building in Atlanta. So Lions get the win over Atlanta. All right, well, now I believe we have the game of the week. We were fooled last week. Pittsburgh against Tennessee. 2 5-0 teams squaring off in Music City.
This is going to be a tough one. I know the Pittsburgh's defense is really playing well right now, but I just have that feeling that, playing at home, the Titans are going to eke out a really, bloodbath, knuckle dragger, rock fight, whatever you want to call it. This is going to be one of those like 21-20 games.
Yeah, well, I actually had the Titans winning this one 27-24. Derrick Henry will probably stiff arm his way to another touchdown. I don't know. Maybe he will. I don't know. Maybe the Steelers' defense is much tougher, but I still can't get over the fact that he sent Josh Norman into tomorrow. But I think the Steelers are much better built than another repeat of Josh Norman. But I'm going to give Tennessee the win, 27. What did I say? 21?
27-24, yeah.
27-20. Field goal difference in this one. All right. Let's talk about the Carolina Panthers, New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, I think the Saints are at home, even though there's no crowd there. They always seem to be playing better inside the dome. I think they win big.
Yeah, they get Michael Thomas back, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So you think they win big?
I think, yeah. I'm going to say 34-17.
Okay, well, I'll give it 37-19. How's that? I'll throw an oddball score. We'll see what happens. I don't think Carolina has enough offense there. And, of course, Teddy Bridgewater's homecoming to New Orleans as well. But will that make any difference? Who knows? But, yeah, I think New Orleans definitely – they have the weapons. They have Alvin Kamara. You get Michael Thomas back, Emmanuel Sanders, and Drew Brees. And who knows? You never know by the end of the year whether Jameis Winston will play at some point. I don't know. We'll see. But, yeah, I'm with you. New Orleans wins big here. Another good game, too. Seattle 5-0 against Arizona, 4-2. The game is in Arizona, by the way. So,
yeah, I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I do like the Seahawks in this one, though. I think like 34-28.
Yeah, well, I'll give the Seahawks the nod to 35-31. I don't know. It's hard to bet against the Seahawks right now, but the Cardinals could give them a battle, and this could be an upset too. You never know, especially the fact that each team has a lot of weapons. They really do. So I
Yeah,
don't know, 35-31. See how we got three more games we're going to talk about. San Francisco 49ers 3-3 against the New England Patriots 2-3. San Francisco got a good win last week. So, and the
they
Patriots,
do.
they got to figure out what they're doing here. Otherwise, it gets uglier.
Yeah. Well, San Francisco's starting to get healthy on defense.
Yeah.
I thought they did a really good job against the Rams last week. Um, and that running game is so varied that they run down there with Kyle Shanahan. And I just, I have too many questions about New England right now. They're still, I know a lot of guys came back to practice today. We don't know if they're going to actually be able to play. I like San Francisco in this one. The last three times Bill Belichick has played Shanahan, the scores were 34-27, 34-27, 34-28. So I'm going 34-27.
Well, you know what? You know it better than I do. I'll just give Shanahan the benefit of the doubt. 24-20. I'll take the low end and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going with the trend since the last three times they've had that score. So I'm
Well,
going to go with that.
you're doing it because you had Tom Brady as your quarterback. So
Right.
I don't know. I'm going the lower score because I'm not sure what we're going to see out of Cam Newton this week. Is what I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I do like the Niners this week.
Yeah, me too. 24. So 24. Two more games. Kansas City Chiefs 5-1 against Denver Broncos. You know, I think the Chiefs roll in this one. I really do.
Yes. That Denver secondary is not as good as what they look like against the Patriots and Cam Newton. I think they're in for coming down to earth party this week against Mahomes. I think Tyreek Hill's going to go off in the thin air up there.
So where's your score?
38-17.
Well, I'm going to say 37-10 in favor of Kansas City. It's going to get ugly.
I think so too.
Final game of the night: Tampa Bay Bucks 4-2 against the Las Vegas Raiders 3-2. My goodness, it gets interesting when Tom Brady gets to face teams in the AFC, and he's going to do it in Vegas. What Tampa's team is going to show up, or what Raiders team will show up?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really good game. The Raiders have some weapons. Tampa obviously has some weapons. It'll depend on who's available and who's not. I like Tampa in this one, pulling out a close one, 27-24.
Yeah, I had 27-21 in favor of the Buccaneers too, so right there. So
great minds think alike.
Oh yeah, well you and I, that's what it is. Great minds think alike. And folks, just so you know, okay, Steve and I didn't rehearse these scores. We go ahead and try to follow our hunches based on trends, and that's how we try to arrive at what we're coming up with. So, but meanwhile, we'll find out. We'll get our report card, and for those of you that are listening to it, you can always check us at the gate if we mess up. I'll give you just one moment. All I know is I'll be watching the game in my sports bar here locally over at Duffy's in Coconut Creek, Florida, with my other half. So we'll see what happens.
I'll be kicked back in the easy chair here in the Casa de Balestrieri and eating some nachos and hopefully watching some really good football on Sunday.
Well, the guy's got the NFL Sunday ticket, and if you want to send the Jaguars Doug Marrone a note, then you can tell him to get Gus the Kicking Mule to go ahead and kick field goals, and maybe Gus the Kicking Mule can go out there and kick Arena Football League field goals. Although I hear Josh Lambo might be back. I don't know for sure, but that's what I thought I saw in the release. Nevertheless, the Jacksonville Jaguars' problems extend way beyond the kicking team, and if they can't stop anybody and give up over 30 points, I have a feeling, too, that I know they play the Chargers, not the game we put out there, but I have a feeling that Justin Herbert's going to get his first win at the expense of the Jaguars. So, and Anthony Lynn all of a sudden may find himself on a hot seat if he can't right that Chargers ship pretty quick. So
I know it. And has there been a more impressive rookie quarterback who's gone 0-4 than
not to my knowledge? I've seen a lot of them, but Justin Herbert looks pretty good. So I have a feeling for the second week in a row, two coaches on the hot seat could exist. Of course, every time Doug Marrone steps on the field, whether there'll always be coaches on the hot seat with the opponents he has lined.
Yeah. Well, him and whenever I see Adam Gase, I have flashbacks to that the old movie Shawshank Redemption, where
Oh yeah.
the guy on death row's walking in and the guy's yelling, "Dead man walking! We have a dead man walking here."
I don't know. Doug Marrone's living that line right now.
Yeah.
He has a 2-year contract, and I don't know whether the Jacksonville Jaguars will eat the final year or whether they'll let him go to the rebuild. But fans or no fans, in fact, what can I tell you? It could get ugly. The most interesting part about the Lions game against the Jaguars is there were quite a few Detroit jerseys in there, and I saw them over the Hyatt Regency. So we had a good time hanging out at the Hyatt Regency in downtown Jacksonville. Had a view of
Nice.
the water. It was pretty neat. So, but anyways, any closing thoughts, Mr. Steve?
Well, yes, actually, I do, and it involves somebody we talked about on the show here just a couple of weeks ago, and that we got the sad news that Doc Emmerich is retired.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's going to be missed. He's one of the real joys to listen to. I mean, when he does the NHL games, I don't think there's anybody better. And I was sorry to hear that, but good for Doc. I think, as we mentioned on the show here a couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity to meet him and talk some hockey with him. I know you met him. You showed me the pictures.
Right.
Just,
And I actually put them on my Facebook page too. I'm sure you probably know.
yeah, I did. I noticed him there, and he's a guy who's, for as big as a name he is, devoid of ego, down to earth, just a tremendous person inside and out. And when you talk with him, you feel like you have 100% of his attention, and he makes you feel special. So that time, like I said, I got to meet him, and him and Chico Resch, who was doing the Devils games at the time, they were, and got to talk hockey with those guys. It was awesome, but especially Doc. I mean, he's going to be missed, but we wish him all the best.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question, Steve, that he's the greatest hockey announcer of all time. And I'll tell you what, one of the greatest hockey announcers of all time that I always enjoyed growing up as a kid was Dan Kelly. But Doc,
I remember Dan Kelly well.
Oh yeah, Dan Kelly was great. I think I met him once in Pompano Beach. But let's keep the spotlight on Doc. My time in North Carolina a year ago, he spent time with me and we talked, and not once but on 2 occasions, both at the seminar that I had as well as the awards banquet. So he took time with me, and we're both Michigan guys. I think he lives in St. Clair, Michigan, and I'm from the Metro Detroit area as well. So it was great. Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought him up. Thank you very much for doing that. I enjoy posting those on my Facebook page. I even put them up on Instagram, but mainly on Facebook, where I have 1 million more followers anyways than I do on Instagram. Not knocking Instagram, but I'm glad you brought them up. It was certainly truly great too. And Doc, you're listening to this broadcast, enjoy your retirement. Now, as I understand, this year when they were in the bubble, NBC customized a studio in his home, and he was doing the games at home. So
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was. So he had an opportunity to enjoy what it's like to be at home. You would never know the way everybody's doing all this remote broadcasting anyhow. But they did. I guess he enjoyed. It was not such a bad idea to stay home and hang out at home and not go out there and eat on the road anymore. But when you've done it for 50 years as well as he has, there's no better time to retire than on your own terms, for sure.
Right.
And I always view too, though, Steve, that, and I mentioned this earlier in the broadcast, that, every game I go to is a blessing, okay? I never know when my last game is, but I know, because I think the man upstairs has a path for us. He really does. And I'm not saying anything about my NFL career, because I hope to cover the NFL as long as I'm physically able to do it, and as long as the circumstances dictate, depending on access based on the COVID-19 aftermath. But you know what? To me, it's all about going out on your own terms, and Doc Emmerich did exactly that. So thanks for bringing it up, Steve. I appreciate that.
My pleasure, because he was a joy to listen to.
And I'm glad I got the photos to show for it. So good.
Yeah, like I told you, that my big regret was I didn't have my camera that day.
Don't get me started on that. Don't you even get me started on that, because I can tell you those. Well, maybe and I don't want to have a show about missed photo opportunities, because a lot of it's out of our control, because we didn't have the cameras, and who knows how many, if we did, how many of the phones died, but that's for another day, another time.
Yeah.
So with that said, as we conclude the broadcast, you know the drill. Give them the details about Steve Balestrieri.
Again, you can follow me on Twitter at SteveB7SFG. I'm also on Instagram. And I write for PatsFans.com. I do a podcast for them called Patriots 4th and 2. We have a show coming up. It might be tomorrow. I'll have to check my schedule. And we do a video podcast as we're doing like this. And, we're looking forward to a good football game on Sunday with the 49ers. Hopefully we'll be back to 500, but I'm not so sure about it this week.
Okay. Well, we'll find out. TBD, as they say in our business, right? Anytime you see TBD, whether it's with COVID testing, games canceled, or just TBD, I don't know. Just saw a lot of different variables this year. It's really an unprecedented year.
It's been 2020 has been a rough year.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, when you look at all the big people in the world of sports that died, it's unreal. I had a show on earlier in the broadcast with Mark Littell. We talked about some of the key major league people that died, like Whitey Ford, Bob Gibson, Tom Seaver, Lou Brock, Al Kaline, just to name a few.
All-star game in heaven this year.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, when you think of all the people that have passed on, it's unbelievable. In fact, let me get that list that I talked about, because I think it is important. Joe Morgan, Al Kaline, Tom Seaver, Lou Brock, Bob Gibson, Whitey Ford. You're right. Definitely on an all-star team up in heaven. So rest in peace to those guys as well. And once again, Doc Emmerich, thanks for making two individuals on this broadcast life a lot more enjoyable. So enjoy retirement. So with that said, you can listen to the Sports Exchange, the audio version, on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. If I spoke too fast, it won't be the first time I've heard it. Won't be the last, okay? Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. That's the word, at Tribune South. Thankfully, I met Steve Balestrieri on Twitter. Best thing that's ever happened. Really enjoyed meeting you there. And obviously, who never would have ever thought it turned out to be a working relationship as well as a friendship as well. Facebook and Instagram, South Florida Tribune. Go ahead and follow us there. The YouTube channel, South Florida Tribune. Please subscribe for free there. And if you do, I'll give you 6 good reasons why you should. The Sports Exchange, to show that you're listening and watching. No limits. 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, Real and the Rare, Fantasy Football, South Florida Tribune Podcast. We have lots of different shows for lots of different tastes. So once again, subscribe to our YouTube channel, South Florida Tribune. Our website is www.southfloridatribune.com. We have a section on there for Motor City Monitor, where we go ahead and, since I'm from the metropolitan Detroit area, I like to go out there and promote my hometown. And why not? Have the ability to do it, and I will do it, because without the Metro Detroit area, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. We have our media distribution partners that provide us with content. We have our columnists that provide us with content. And more importantly, these broadcasts can be seen on the WSAN dropdown. You can find each and every one of those there. You can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. And you can go ahead and reach Steve and I that way. And on LinkedIn, Scott Morganroth gets it done. So on behalf of Steve Balestrieri, my name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of the Sports Exchange. Good night, Steve.
Good night.